Mika Zibanejad scores twice on one-timers. Yes, that really happened. Plus, Mike Sullivan rips into his team, and we tell you why he was correct to do so.
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1432 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. So we got a lot to do here. The Rangers coming off of a 6-2 win a little bit earlier today. The rare Friday afternoon start time for the Rangers and the Bruins today. We're going to be talking about Mike Sullivan laying into his team in the middle of this game while his team was still up by 3 goals. Going to tell you why he was justified to do that. Also, going to basically call for Ranger fans to, in the spirit of Thanksgiving, just be thankful for these wins. The Rangers have won 3 in a row after it looked like the season might kind of go sideways, and they've seemingly righted the ship. But we begin with a really strong performance by Mika Zibanejad, who really is having a nice bounce-back season this season as a whole. More on that in a little bit. But something that we mentioned in our most recent episode, and of course the Rangers were coming off of a win against the Carolina Hurricanes, and now with that win and the win before that against the Blues, now this win against the Bruins, they have won 3 in a row. Something that we mentioned at that time was that when you're going through it, when you're up against it and things are not going well, and clearly the Rangers were not playing very well at all before that, they had lost 4 in a row, you need your stars, you need your best players, you need your top paid players to be the guys that lead you out of the darkness. And we've seen that certainly in these last 2 games, definitely against the Canes, and then we saw it again here from Mika Zibanejad, specifically against the Boston Bruins. We do have to give a quick honorable mention to Artemi Panarin. I mean, we could talk about him all night, too. He ended up with a 4-point night, scored the first goal, assisted on the next 3, and that was all well and good. And obviously, Panarin's been on fire ever since getting the haircut. But for me, the headline grabber, the big story of this game was Mika Zibanejad converting goals on a couple of one-timer opportunities. This did not happen really at all last season. It's something that used to be a weapon in Mika's repertoire, and he's gotten away from it in recent seasons. Starting to find it again a little bit this season. We've seen a couple of one-timer goals even before this one, but in this game, it really stood out, obviously, in a positive way, because not only does Mika Zibanejad end up with 2 goals in this game, that's great in its own right. Not only does he convert 2 power plays with goals, but he did so again on a pair of one-timers, and it feels like he is starting to rediscover the accuracy and the velocity on his one-timer. Sometimes I wonder if he's kind of made an adjustment this season. I feel like we've seen this from time to time where he's sacrificing just a little bit of the velocity. I mean, he can still shoot it, don't get me wrong, but he's sacrificing a little bit of the velocity in order to make sure that he gets good wood on the puck, that he times the shot correctly, and that he, if nothing else, at least gets the puck on net. I mean, Mika can shoot the puck. We know that. We've seen him with these one-timers in the past. At least give yourself a chance to score, and if that means you have to take a little bit off of the velocity to ensure that it's an accurate shot, then so be it. I feel like we saw that maybe on both of these. I mean, the first one was a rocket from a tough angle. The second one was, actually was kind of a little bit lower, a little bit of a lower one-timer. We don't see that all that often, but it's been nice to see Mika, again, rediscover that ability, rediscover that weapon that he's had at his disposal for the majority of his career, the last couple of seasons, potentially notwithstanding. But to kind of go through these goals, I mean, the first one, the Mika score on the one-timer. Again, the Rangers are on the power play. This is the big 2-minute minor. They're going to be on the power play for 4 straight minutes, and they actually have 6 seconds of 5-on-3 time at the very start of this. And the 5-on-3 expired, but Mika was able to score here. We had a face-off win by JT Miller. JT did an awesome job fighting for the puck on this one. This really could have gone either way. He bodied the guy in front of him, basically just bullied him, got control of the puck, and sent it back to Fox. Fox over to Panarin. Panarin then with a pass in deep and to his left to Mika Zibanejad. And like I mentioned just a minute ago, Mika scoring on, somewhat of a difficult angle here, kind of a sharp angle from pretty close to the boards there, but an absolute snipe. Great shot there. And then the second one, this too was on the power play. And it's crazy because Mika almost scored early in this power play, went off Korpisalo's shoulder and over the net, so he wasn't able to score there. The Rangers work it right back to him, and this time he converts. You've got Fox from the right point centering the puck to Artemi Panarin, and then Panarin setting up Mika in that same spot, in the left faceoff circle. Mika's waiting for it. He shoots, and he scores. And again, what I love about this is this used to be Mika Zibanejad's office. So you hope that he can get back to this. You can hope he can rediscover that scoring prowess, especially on the power play. But 5-on-5 is great as well. But just great to see that. 2 power play goals, and this really allowed the Rangers to break the game open. And as it turns out, they needed these goals because they were up 4-0. They were in complete control. And obviously the Bruins rallied in the third period. It got a little bit dicey there, and Sullivan ripped into his team. But we'll get into that in greater detail in just a little bit. The other thing that I got to point out here, because this kind of gets lost in the shuffle. So obviously Mika, 2 one-timer power play goals in relatively short order here. I don't know what the exact time was between these 2 goals, but it obviously was only a handful of minutes, if that. Mika came exceptionally close to making it a hat trick. He had a one-timer after the second power play goal where Gavrikov set him up, and Mika's in that same spot in the left face-off circle there, and he's able to fire it off the post. So Mika was like this close to not only a natural hat trick, but a natural hat trick that would have occurred in the span of about 4 or 5 minutes at the most. 4 or 5 minutes for a natural hat trick. It would have been in the same period. It would have been from the same spot on the ice, and it would have been all on one-timers. That's pretty crazy. He was that close to doing it. I know woulda, coulda, shoulda, and all that, but that was pretty close to being obviously a very, very unique moment there for Mika Zibanejad and the New York Rangers. But as it is, we'll take what he gave us. He was awesome in this game. And the one thing I'll mention here, the one thing that I hope doesn't happen, I don't want to see the Rangers go back to the trap that they fell into a couple of seasons ago. Even when they had a really good team, there were times I thought, particularly on the power play, where this team was a little bit too reliant on force-feeding Mika Zibanejad one-timers. And I think at a certain point, penalty kills or even just defenses in general at even strength, they started to kind of key on that. They started to look to take that away. And I think to a certain extent they did. And then, of course, last season, Mika just couldn't hit a clean one-timer to save his life. He really couldn't. I joked last season, but it wasn't really a joke, that I think Mika Zibanejad has a better chance when he's attempting a one-timer, has a better chance of breaking his stick than he does of scoring a goal. And for a while there, legit, I think that actually was the case. But as we just gotten done talking about here, obviously Mika for today and other points this season, he seems to be rediscovering the prowess for that one-timer play. And that's been awesome to see, But again, overall, beyond the one-timer, beyond the one nice game here, beyond the 2 goals that he scored in this one, it's just been in general a very nice bounce back season for Mika Zibanejad. A lot of us, I think, basically myself included, left him for dead about midway through last season. It just felt like that passion, that fire, they just weren't there. And then I do think, and I'll continue to say this, that trade where the Rangers reacquired JT Miller has been a positive development for Mika Zibanejad, particularly when they're playing together, because I do think there's good chemistry there. And I do think Mika kind of follows JT's lead a little bit. But just in general, I think it's been a good thing for Mika Zibanejad. That addition of JT Miller last season gave Mika a boost down the stretch last year, and it certainly carried over into this season as well. And even beyond all the points in the offense, just a better brand of hockey for Mika Zibanejad this season as well. You look at his numbers, they're not overwhelming. 18 points in 26 games. It's not a small total, but it's not like a grandiose total either. But I also feel like Mika could have a lot more. I don't think there's a player on this Ranger team that has been unluckier when it comes to hitting the post, when it comes to getting absolutely robbed by the opposing goalie, when it comes to just poor puck luck, whatever it might be. I feel like Mika could have quite a couple more goals than he currently has. But be that as it may, it's been a strong start to the season for Mika Zibanejad. We've seen some physicality from Mika as well. He had 3 more hits in this game. Here's a stat that I'll throw at you guys right now as well. And granted, hits are not the only way to measure physicality, but this did stand out to me. Mika now has 36 hits in 26 games this season. Last year, he had 44 hits in 82 games. It's conceivable that Mika could tie or even pass his total hits from last season 2 games from now, or at the most 3 games from now. That certainly could happen. He's forechecking, he's backchecking again. Just a much, much stronger start to the season for Mika Zibanejad here. Everybody loves a redemption story. Everybody loves a comeback story. And it hasn't been perfect with Mika. We'll see. He's still got a lot of time left on that contract and a lot of money that's still owed to him. I know a lot of people, they would trade Mika even now in an instant if they actually could. I don't think that's going to happen. You got to make the most out of Mika Zibanejad and what you have here. And what you've got so far this season, again, is at least thus far, a positive bounce back showing for Mika, 26 games into the season here or whatever we're at this point. But in just a minute, we're going to keep everything rolling. This game was not without adversity. It was not without some shouting on the Ranger bench. Mike Sullivan laid into his team during this game, even though the Rangers had a 3-goal lead at that time. And in just a minute, we're going to talk about why he was absolutely justified in doing so. We will get to that in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Monarch. Let's be honest, most of us cannot name all of our financial accounts, let alone what they're worth. Between 401ks, savings, and investments, it is easy to lose track. And that can mean leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch, an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch's visual dashboards and smart tools make it so much easier to understand where your money is going and how to make it work harder for you. So, do not let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarch.com for 50% off of your first year. That's monarch.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off of your first year. All right, let's go ahead and keep everything rolling here. On Locked On New York Rangers, huge shout out to the everydayers. As always, thank you guys so much for supporting this podcast. Rangers, moving in the right direction again. Slowly but surely, I think recommitting to defense has certainly helped this team. The third period of this game notwithstanding, but overall, that's been vastly improved. And like we talked about in the last section, the star players being a step up as well. And the Rangers are really going to be tested tomorrow because they are back in action at 2 p.m. tomorrow, Saturday, at home against Tampa. And it's going to be their fourth game in 6 days. We'll see how they can handle it. I mean, don't fall into the mistake if you're the Rangers of thinking like, 3 wins in 4 games, that's good enough. Come out with a lot of energy, a lot of fire, and go out there and look to earn this win against obviously a tough opponent. But in this game, let's keep the focus here for the time being. Mike Sullivan ripped into the Rangers during a timeout. And I think he was completely justified in doing so. I'll explain my reasons why for that in just a second. But to kind of set the stage for anybody that might have missed it, or just to kind of refresh you guys on everything that happened and really kind of set the stage for Sullivan's, borderline blow up at his team on the bench there. The third period was getting a little bit dicey. I mean, the Rangers were in complete control through 2 periods. I loved their game for the first 40 minutes. Defensively responsible, not chasing offense. That's something that Sullivan and even some of the players have talked about in the past. That might have been part of the reason why they lost 4 games in a row not too long ago. Kind of letting the game come to them a little bit, thinking defense first. And it worked brilliantly through 40 minutes. And the Rangers, the offense was eventually there. Obviously, Mika had the big day. Panarin's on fire recently. And lo and behold, despite not, cheating for offense, the Rangers are up 4-0 at the second intermission. But like I just said, the third period did get a little bit dicey. They just didn't have that same jump, that same kind of focus early in the third. We saw the Bruins get one back, relatively early. There were a couple of different scoring chances for the Bruins early in this period. And then not too long after it went 4-1, the Bruins basically, took advantage of some lethargic play, I thought, by the Rangers, and they're able to get another chance right from the doorstep there, and Igor has to make an awesome save. And Igor doesn't typically show up his guys, and I don't think he really did that here, but he did have a little bit of like arms out, like, come on, guys, let's go. Let's pick it up a little bit. And that's when Sullivan called his timeout. And man, he laid into his team here. There were about 14 minutes to go. First of all, let me just say, I love the use of the timeout here. I think there's times where NHL coaches, they almost forget that they have the timeout, or they fall into this trap of thinking that like, well, we can only call the timeout when there's like a minute and a half or 2 minutes to go and we have to set something up. And obviously that is a good time to use your timeout. But when you're up by 3 goals and it's the third period and you're seeing what Sullivan was seeing here and you're seeing what we were all seeing here, this is a perfect time to use a timeout. Be proactive here. Don't let Boston like really get back into this game. Don't let them build their confidence. Calling timeout, if nothing else, it kind of takes the air out of the game just for a couple seconds there, because you do essentially just freeze play. You get to talk to your team a little bit. And, the Bruins, they had some momentum there. You want to drop the puck and you want to keep going. And by calling the timeout, you at least kind of nullify that at least a little bit. But Sullivan really laid into his team. He was up and down the bench. He was yelling at guys to his left, guys to his right, guys that were on the ice. Nobody was spared here. I don't think there's a single player on the Rangers. Maybe Dylan Garand might have been the only one because he's the backup goalie, and obviously he wasn't playing at this time. But it wasn't directed at any 1 or 2 players, and I like that too, because obviously he's not singling out people, but he was laying into them and let them know this isn't good enough, this is unacceptable. And I think part of the message there too is like, You guys have played a great game. Like, are you really going to let this happen? Are you really going to let things get away from you right now? I probably can't. I mean, if you read lips, there was some colorful language there to be sure. Can't repeat everything that he said. But I would also say this is probably as angry as we've seen Sullivan get with his team during a game when it comes to addressing them on the bench. Now, we don't see everything that goes on behind closed doors, obviously, so maybe it's been worse than this at other times this season. Sullivan is not a coach that's going to shy away from this kind of a thing, but I like the fact that he really, gave them a kick in the you-know-what and said, let's get it going here, and they mostly did that. Now, I know a lot of people are going to hear that and say, well, wait a minute, the Bruins scored immediately after this timeout. And yes, they did. There was an offensive zone face-off for the Bruins right after this timeout. 5 or 6 seconds later, the puck is in the net. They score. It's now 4-2. But I think from this moment on, after this goal here, the Rangers did play better. It wasn't perfect. The game opened up quite a bit more than I think you would like a game to open up when you're up by 4 goals or 3 goals, or at this point, now 2 goals. But I think for the most part, the Rangers tightened things up defensively. They also got back to their forecheck, which was a real strength of this team early in the game. It's a big reason why the Rangers basically dictated the game to the Bruins, why they were in control, why they had a 4-0 lead at the end of 2 periods. For the most part, things were better after this. They got back to work. They seemed to find their game again. And there wasn't any panic in their game after this either. And I think they did a nice job after this, not eliminating, but at least limiting, quality Bruins scoring chances from this point forward. So that was obviously nice to see. Then you get the empty netter by Lafreniere. And then you get an extra goal by Gavrikov in the closing, minute or two there. So that was nice to see. For a game that the Rangers won 6-2 and were leading for pretty much the entire way, like I said, it did get a little bit dicey there. But I do appreciate the fact that Sullivan knew when to use his timeout, that he called out the Rangers at a time where they needed to be called out. And I can also appreciate the fact that multiple Rangers after this game were accountable about what was going on there. Panarin was one of them. He said, we were controlling in the beginning, but after the second period, we still lost our focus. Can't happen. So he's on top of that. There were a couple other quotes as well. I don't have a whole lot of them written down, but this is what we got from Mike Sullivan talking about, what was going on in the third period here is what Sullivan had to say after the game. That's the challenge. When you get up with a 4-goal lead going to the third period, you're almost guarding against human nature where you want to exhale and you can't in today's game. I thought after they scored, we started to respond again and started to play the game that we wanted to play. And I totally agree. I mean, it's a tough balance because you're up by 4 goals and there's that, Sullivan mentioned there's that knack to kind of take it easy a little bit, but you just can't do that. These teams are too talented. And I know Boston had some injuries and they were compromised and they were hot for a while, but I don't think too many people have them pegged as Stanley Cup contenders this season. And, if nothing else, I think hopefully for this Ranger team, for these players, this is a reminder and it's a reinforcement of something that we all know, that I think they all know as well. There are very few easy wins in the NHL. There's not too many games where you get to just coast for 60 minutes and bury a team and win by 4 or 5 goals. It just doesn't go that way. This team is this league is too balanced. There's too much parity, and these guys are in the NHL for a reason. Even though the Bruins roster was compromised today, these guys are in the NHL for a reason, and it's just a reminder, and one that I hope the Rangers really take to heart here, that you can never relax, you can never take your foot off the gas, especially in the third period. You got to come out hungry in the third period, even though you're up 4-0, and look to close the game with some authority. And I guess in the end, in a way, they did that. Those 2 late goals that you end up winning by 4. I do think they closed things down defensively a little bit after the Sullivan timeout. But overall, I think any player on the Rangers, anybody that watched this game would tell you they need to be better than what they showed at the start of the third period. And hopefully it's a lesson learned and they don't make that same mistake again. So they got the win. That's what counts. Just a minute where we keep everything going. We're going to essentially talk a little bit about why I think everybody needs to be thankful for this recent run of Ranger hockey here. We're going to get to the reasons for that. It's kind of in the spirit of Thanksgiving, and for all those who celebrate, it's now the day after Thanksgiving. So we're going to get to that in just a second. Okay, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, let's go ahead and wrap up today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers by just appreciating where the Rangers are in the season, appreciating this 3-game winning streak. Like I said, it's very much it's the time of the season, to feel this way, I think. I realize I'm mostly preaching to the choir here, and that most of you typically are happy when the Rangers win. I mean, isn't that the whole point of being into sports? Isn't that a whole team, the whole point of rooting for this team or rooting for that team? But you also have to acknowledge this certain group of Ranger fans, and they are out there, and you all know who you are, that just never can really be happy after a Ranger win. Or maybe it's not even that, but it's just that, like, there's certain fans that always have to have, like, a qualifier for why the Rangers won. They can never just give the Rangers credit for winning a game. It just can't happen. You take this recent stretch of games as an example. Okay, the Rangers beat the Bruins to end their 4-game winning streak. And there's a lot of, oh, my God, it's the Bruins. They had to win sooner or later. They had lost 4 in a row. Excuse me, it's the Blues. I said it's the Bruins, but it's the Blues. They're not any good. They're, a bad team. The Rangers were just a little less bad than the Blues. Why would you even be happy about the Rangers beating the Blues? I don't know, because I like it when my team wins, and I'm happy when my team wins. And again, I know I'm preaching to the choir, and a lot of you will back me up on that. But, there's people that can't be happy after they beat the Blues. Then you've got the game against the Canes. Now, this is a big-time division rivalry. We've seen these teams collide in the playoffs a couple of times over the last handful of seasons, and the Rangers have come out on top more often than not. And it's always a battle, and it can get kind of nasty between these teams as well. And there's a lot of like, oh man, you only beat the Canes because Frederik Andersen is so bad, and that's the only reason why the Rangers won. Okay, first of all, Freddie Andersen is not a bad goalie. He gets hurt a lot. I'll give you that. But when he's on the ice, for the most part in his career, he's been a very solid goalie. Not elite, but a very solid goalie, and somebody that, you have to play well to be able to beat him. And if you don't believe me, go look at his career numbers. Point to me anything that is bad. He's off to a rough start this season, but for the most part for his career, been a very, very good goalie. But the funniest thing about that one to me is I feel like the fans who are saying like, oh, well, you only beat the Canes because, Frederik Andersen is so bad. Okay, are these the same fans that tell you that, like, oh, the Rangers should have never re-signed Igor Shesterkin because goalies aren't that important? Are goalies important or not? You got to pick a lane and you got to stay in it. So that's the excuse for the Canes game. And then for this one, I mean, you already see it on social media. I mean, obviously, I haven't seen the comments of this episode yet because we haven't published it yet. I'm still recording. But, there's a lot of like, oh, well, the Bruins, they got so many injuries, and Korpisalo's in instead of Swayman, and the Rangers got a break there. And, a lot of people are down with injuries for the Bruins, and they didn't play in this game and all this other stuff. Okay, look, injuries happen. It's unfortunate. I would never certainly root for anybody to get injured. Nobody on the Rangers or anybody else. But it's an unfortunate reality of pro sports and just sports in general. These games are very physical. They're very demanding. People are going to go out there and they're going to get injured. It does happen. And if a team is injured, if a team is compromised, if a team is missing 4 or 5, significant players, a superstar player or two, then you have to take advantage of it because you can't feel bad for them. They're not going to feel bad for you. Imagine if the Rangers were out there and they were missing 3 or 4 of their best players. Do you think the Bruins are going to feel bad for the Rangers? Do you think any of the Bruins fans are going to feel bad for the Rangers? And hey, maybe if the Bruins were at full strength, maybe they win this game. I'm not so sure they do, though. I think it's entirely possible, certainly, that the Rangers would have won this game anyway. And by the way, the Rangers are missing one of their best 4 defensemen, Will Borgen. Now, I don't think that completely cripples this lineup or cripples this team or anything along those lines, but he's a significant player. He's an important player, and certainly if he was healthy, he would be out there. The Rangers had to go without Vincent Trocheck for a long time. JT Miller, he missed a couple of games. It looks like he's been playing hurt the entire season. And now Jonathan Quick is hurt as well. So they're not the only team dealing with injuries. The Rangers have had to deal with injuries. There's probably teams that have taken advantage of that against the Rangers. So if you're the Rangers, you take advantage, you beat a team that's compromised, and you don't apologize for it. And certainly as fans, you shouldn't feel bad about it either. You should just enjoy it. Be thankful that the Rangers are winning these games. So for the people that would like you to believe that the Blues win doesn't really count, and the Canes win doesn't really count, and now the Bruins win today, that doesn't really count either. Do any wins count for the Rangers? Like, I swear, the Rangers could go out there against the Edmonton Oilers teams, the dynasty from the 80s and into the very early 90s there. I believe it was 5 Stanley Cup wins in 7 seasons. The Rangers could go out there and beat that team in its prime 5-1, And there's certain, not all fans, but there's that certain, small group of fans that would have you believe that, oh, that doesn't really count. There's this reason or that reason. That's the only reason why the Rangers were able to win that game. Just enjoy the wins, because losing isn't fun. Whether you're playing the sport, whether you're watching the sport, whatever it is, there's enough heartbreak in losing it. There's enough heartbreak when you see the Rangers go on a deep playoff run and they get to the conference final and they get eliminated. Those are rough moments. So at least enjoy when they're winning. Try to enjoy those moments for your own sanity, and enjoy them from a practical perspective as well, because this is twice now. We're pretty early in the season. I believe that was the 26th game. The Rangers twice this season already have gone through two separate stretches where it's looked like their season very well might go off the rails and everything might fall apart, and we might be right back to where we were last season. There was that stretch early in the year where the Rangers, they were just getting absolutely stoned by opposing goalies. The game against Edmonton, there was a game against the Canes earlier this season. There were a couple others as well. I don't have the schedule in front of me, but you guys get the idea. They got legitimately goalied a couple times early this season, and they kept losing, and their record suffered, and then they can't beat the Flames or the Sharks, and it's looking like, geez, man, like this might go south really fast. And, it's easy to believe that this group of players could get easily discouraged, getting goalied night in and night out, and things might go south, and they might never recover from it. They recovered from it. They won, I believe it was 6 out of 8, not too long after that rough stretch. Then you get the more recent 4-game losing streak. And in this case, I don't think luck had a whole lot to do with it. I just don't think the Rangers played well enough. And that being the case, they lost 4 games in a row. And again, you're thinking like, geez, this could go south. This could go off the rails. You do start thinking. I think it's human nature for all of us as fans to kind of look at the lay of the land. And it's like, all right, well, if this is how it's going to be, then are the Rangers going to be sellers at the deadline? Are they going to trade Panarin? Are they going to trade this guy and that guy? And what's going to happen? Is Drury going to survive this? And do they need to rebuild all that stuff? And then next thing you know, they play 3 strong games in a row here, and they've won 3 in a row. So in both instances, both of these early season losing streaks where everything looked pretty bleak and pretty rough, the Rangers stuck together. They had each other's backs. They fought their way through it. In both cases, they kind of got back to basics. I think this most recent 3-game winning streak has a lot to do with the Rangers kind of recommitting to defensive hockey and almost being like counterpunchers. Take the offense when it's there, but commit to defense first and foremost. And I think that deserves to be applauded. I think it really does. Last year's team would have folded. They would have folded for sure. So the Rangers right now kind of put a bow on this whole section here. 13, 11, and 2 to start the season. Basically 500. They've won 13 games. They've lost 13 games. And that sounds about right. Because there's been some good to start the season. There's been some bad to start the season as well. And you end up, with the same amount of wins as losses. But there are still fans out there who will tell you, they will tell me that the idea of the Rangers making the playoffs is a pipe dream. Okay, they're 1 point out. They're 1 point out, right? And I think it's too early to even dive into the playoff standings, that deeply this early in the season. But a lot of people have been telling me that and they can't possibly make the playoffs. So I had to bring this up as well. Look, do we really think that the Rangers, they can't possibly finish ahead of a team like the Islanders or the Flyers or even the Caps? I think we all knew some regression was coming for the Caps this season, but these are teams that are just a couple of points ahead of the Rangers. The Rangers are a couple more wins away from being in 3rd place in the Metro. It's not a bad place to be at this point in the season, So, bottom line, playoffs are not impossible. And they're certainly not impossible when you're 1 point out of the last playoff spot and there are 56 games to play. In a literal sense, there's 112 points still out there for the taking for the Rangers. I understand they're not going to get all of those. I get it. But that'll give you an idea of just how little hockey has been played thus far and how much is still to come and how much the Rangers are obviously still in this thing. You go on one hot streak, which the Rangers, that might be getting underway right now as we speak. We'll see. They are getting into, kind of a tough part of their schedule coming up. But you go on one hot streak and you're right back into it. And you're right back in the mix and you put yourself back into a playoff spot. Now, of course, there are no guarantees that this Ranger team is going to make the playoffs, not in the slightest. But my plea to Ranger fans is to please understand the fact this team is not buried. For anybody talking about tanking for McKenna right now, no. We have a season to play. We have a season in front of us. It's way too early for any of those kinds of talks. Just be thankful that the Rangers have turned things around here. They're pointing in the right direction, and they're right back in the fight. That's awesome, and you owe it to yourself as well. If you're watching sports and you're heavily invested in the Rangers, you should be happy when they win. Now, there's things you can nitpick. You can still, if you tell me like for this reason or that reason, well, I still don't believe in this Ranger team because A, B, and C. Okay, I'll hear you out. I'll certainly respect your opinion. But the people that are always doom and gloom and they try to, nullify every win that this Ranger team has, I don't get that either, man. I feel good. They've won 3 in a row. This is awesome. And they're doing it in a tough kind of area in the schedule. You have 3 games sandwiched around Thanksgiving here, and you've got 4 games in 6 days. And I mean, they're passing the test. And tomorrow's another big test as well. Going to be in action against Tampa. But to go 4-0 in this stretch would be an amazing accomplishment. And I think if they do that, Ranger fans should be very, very proud of this team. But we'll call it there. If you guys would like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @jchick17. Once again, @jchik17. And definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.